Hey, buddy.
Hola. Hey, bud.
What's up?
I like this guy. Who do we have here?
This is the Catastrophic,
Okay.
and friend fan made this for me. Ben side, friend side.
Wow.
Cat playing bass.
That's amazing.
That's me.
It's got a very Carl Thompson kind of vibe to it.
Who the fuck's Carl
Uh,
Thompson?
Carl Thompson, he's the guy that built Les Claypool's bass, original Stanley Clark.
Okay, yeah, no, that's coming together.
You know him. You know the bass with the wooden scroll. He's got like his cat. He always he's like stay cool or like keep swinging, Carl. He's got this cat. It's his apprentice who built my bass.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Who's the apprentice?
So his name is Joe Cruz, and MBJ Guitars is his company.
Shout out to Cruz, MBJ Guitars.
Yeah, big time, man. He is the man. We were texting the other day. He checked out my stream. His MBJ guitar stands for Moonbeam Junior Guitars. So that's why we named my bass the Blood Moon Bass.
Okay, nice.
It's got this bloodwood in it, and it's got like these bloodwood red moons in it. So
That's dope. I'm losing you. You still there? This doesn't bode well.
yeah,
There you go. My internet connection is
yeah, you kind of froze for a second there.
What do you freaking do? Trying to connect.
I can see you okay now.
Okay. Hang on.
Good, better.
Yeah, I heard someone connect. I was like, oh, it must be Luke. It's 2:15 on the dot. Like, he's good. And then I come over and move this picture, and it's Marc. I'm like, oh, hey, buddy. What are you doing here? He's like, I thought it was 2:15. I was like, well, you emailed this morning 2:30. Is that okay still? He's like, yeah, I'll be right back. Just like link up with him. Like, all right, here we go.
I'm sure he's got a lot of times that he's keeping track of with all the lessons.
Yeah, and I
and
think he just
everything.
went with the meeting on Zoom. It's been cool to kind of figure this whole shit out.
Right.
But damn it, every time I try to connect to Bluetooth, I should just stick with my headphones. Are you just going straight through the computer?
Yeah.
Are you just
You're
going?
frozen a little bit. Now it's okay. It's kind of freezing.
It's whenever I'm connecting to Bluetooth. I should just go with my headphones. Are you coming through the computer?
Do you want us to use headphones?
I don't know.
I'm just using the computer mic.
All right, I'll start with that. I got these just in case. All right, fuck it.
Yeah, I can plug in my headphones whenever.
Nah, let's leave it off for now.
I use the headphones when I do lessons.
We'll see if this works.
Shout out Apple.
Shout out Apple. I'm more of a Mandarin Orange guy myself. Is that what they call Huawei?
Yeah, me too.
Huh. Mandarin Orange.
Wawa?
Huawei, the company from China, the Mandarin Orange versus Apple.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they can give them a run for their money for sure.
Got some cool thunder out here going on. I don't want to open the window and listen to it, but that might interrupt.
Is it raining by you too?
It was early.
It's been crazy.
Yeah, there's like a
Yeah,
lot going on.
That's like same here. It's very like tropical storm-esque.
Right.
When you go outside, I was literally there's like a little stream in my yard, and so I was like at my dining room table with my computer this morning, and a duck flew out, and the wind just hit the duck,
Whoa.
and like the duck just started flying backwards. Like it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Yeah,
That's
it
pretty
was
cool.
really wild.
Nice.
It was wild. Yeah. So what do you think about my background here? I've gone with a casual blend. I'm here on the couch, so I can be mellow and
And
relax.
then you can zoom. Yeah. Cool.
And then we can go to bass. So we can go life, bass.
Space. I like it. Yeah, I have to.
That's our
I got to figure out some like blackout curtains here. It's gonna be easier when I move to my next place.
right.
But when
I
I
like
sit
the
up,
tapestry. It's very casual.
yeah, I could move my bass over here and then would have it like right there. But
Right. We can just pivot to basses.
I mean, you're a better bass player, so you could just play the bass.
No, we're doing bass duels on this podcast, dude. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We gotta record a new intro each time.
Yeah.
As the
exactly.
outro. Yeah.
the new intro is the outro every time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, this has been Back to Bassics.
Or we bookend it. We have intro and the outro. It's
So we
back
just
to back.
start start jamming and then we join in. That's how it goes.
right, exactly. Yeah, I like that.
Perfect.
I'm into it.
I love it.
Yeah, all right, so we got our first episode going live today, buddy. You excited?
I am excited. Yeah, I figured out how to start a website, get emails and shit. I've wanted to do this type of stuff for a while, so it's cool to like actually do it. I also
totally.
Greg sent me a cool Snarky Puppy's doing like I guess it's like a masterclass type thing, and this Saturday is going to be
Cool.
Victor Wooten and Michael League, which is pretty sweet.
Whoa.
So I sign up, and it's a pay what you want. So
Cool. So you sign up for that and you can check it out.
yep, yeah, I'll send
Yeah,
you. I'll email you a link.
please. I will absolutely check that out. That
And you
sounds
know what?
awesome.
We should post it on our Back to Basics page, which we also
Network,
now have.
baby. Space network.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, so he should be joining in soon. Yeah, I got my sheet here, but I think we'll just be able to talk it through. Just let him kind of lead it. And again, he seems kind of busy working all this stuff, so we could just keep it
Brownie's a pretty
succinct.
busy guy. Fair,
He
fair
is,
to
man.
guess. He's a busy man.
Yeah, Greg and Alex did Brownie's podcast. Not Brownie, Jesus Christ, that's who we're talking to. Barber's podcast when we were in LA. I said he's got
Oh,
a
cool.
sweet
I
ass
didn't know.
house. Yeah, he apparently was an investor in Splice early on, I think, and so he did pretty
Wow.
well with that. Like he was one of the, I don't know exactly, and I haven't listened to the podcast or anything.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't even know he had a podcast. What's it called? Do you know?
No idea.
Yeah, interesting.
Barber
I'm gonna check
Sheds.
it out. Yeah, that would make sense.
I don't know.
That's an intuitive guess.
I thought I put you on Do Not Disturb, Mr. Phone.
Yeah, I am. I am the same.
Your phone's on Do Not Disturb?
Oh yeah, but I've got our dock up in case we want to communicate.
Cool. Sweet. Oh, it's starting to
Okay.
get thundery. Thunderous in
I
here.
really, I can't hear. I have my window open. I love to hear just like sound of rain. Like people pay for that in apps, dude. Like,
Yeah, I'm
you
gonna
get a little natural rain.
I'm gonna open up the window. I like this.
Open it up, man. Let's get some rain in there. That way we can date the episode too.
Exactly. There we go. This chair is gonna get wet.
I can feel the moisture coming in digitally already.
Yes, yeah, that's and here is the namesake of the picture.
Oh, dude. What's
That's
it? What is it? A he or a she?
It's a he. It's a
What's
cat.
his name?
Cat
That is a cat.
Mhm.
Wow.
He's known as the cat astrophic.
Cat. Oh, okay. Like the picture. Wow, dude, he's awesome.
Yep. He goes by Astro for short.
Astro. Right. We'll have to have an animal episode. I'll get my basset hounds in here.
I'm down. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
very.
On his forehead, I didn't even realize it's one of these things.
Oh, whoa, cool.
And built a. He was like in college at the time. He didn't even go to college. He's like Jimmy Neutron, boy genius. He built a 3D printer that is actually very impressive.
What is that called?
This just like a pyramid.
Yeah.
Our lights are fluttering. This is crazy.
Wow, it looks like a Zelda Triforce.
Yep. So I am. Let me turn on my Wi-Fi just in case our whole internet goes out. I'm not even plugged in, but our lights are flashing like mad. Right?
When we were talking on the phone earlier, my dining room table lights were flickering, and I was like, "Oh shit!" I've been trying to like charge and power up everything in case it goes out.
Right.
I was digging. You were what?
I got books and a fucking flashlight I can read.
Yeah, me too. I was going through like some old boxes and notebooks and stuff the other day, and I dug up some old books that I have been like looking for and wanted to get around to reading.
Right.
I got like, this is a great one that you would probably dig, The Secret Power of Music.
Ooh, I like that.
It's very cool. I got this like I don't know, in high school. Me and John G were both really into it. And we would even, there's this thing where it's like celestial improv. It's like notes that work depending on like the month, or like here's one like this crazy deep, like musical tones according to the modern Western scale within the moons. So it's like depending what kind of moon cycle it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm there.
It's cool. We used to, like, when the special was first getting together and practicing, we would like look up whatever like the celestial key of the month was and like jam in that key.
What's the celestial key of this month?
Let's find out. I'd have to look it up. I don't know where it is exactly. This is like stained with coffee. But you gotta love a book when it like this book looks like it's been like this is a well-traveled book.
It's lived, yeah, exactly. It's got the scars of a life that has been well lived.
Exactly, man. In some box, in some library somewhere. I'll have to look it up. I think that it's kind of just like, January is C, and then February is C sharp, December, you know what I mean? And then
and there are 12 months, and there's 12 chromatic keys.
Right, exactly. So I guess that's the easy way to look at it. But I know some of them get like deeper, like with the moon cycles and all that kind of stuff. But there's some really cool stuff in here. I remember when I was like applying to Berkeley, I was really into this book, and I made my like personal essay just like all about philosophy shit. And when I showed it to my English teacher, he's like, dude, this isn't like a personal essay. You're just like fanboying out over this book you're reading. Like, and I was like, yeah, that's true.
That sounds like a really good one to read.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the book I got at the Moog Factory about numerology. It wasn't music per se, but it just goes through each number and why each number is important. Going through. It's a really cool old school book. He gave it to my brother to borrow, and I kind of want it back. Gotta grab it from him.
Yeah, that's super. I'm super into like numerology and stuff like that, especially how it applies to music and stuff.
This is different, but it is super trippy. But have you read Victor Wooten's book, The Music Lesson?
I haven't.
Hey, Mark, how's it going, bud?
Here's our guest.
I'll be right back. I just wanted to click on. I'm just finishing one thing, and I'm going to use the bathroom before we go. You guys
Awesome.
looking good over there.
Thanks.
All right.
All right, so let's talk shit about him while he's gone.
Oh, Brownie's got the ill background, dude. He got like the Fender J bass, the Gibson.
Got it set up. That's a cool picture back there too.
Yeah, that is tight.
He's also got one of the hallmarks of being a grown-ass adult, a comfy chair to do work in.
I got a couch.
Yeah, you got a couch. That's pretty good. We're right in the middle. I got this dining room chair, and you got the couch. I think if we combine our forces.
Combined, we've got every level of chill.
Yes, exactly.
Can you hear my rain's picking up? Can you hear the rain?
I hear it through mine. I don't hear it through yours, though. And I don't have my headphones.
Are you going to close your window?
I think I should, just to be safe. But I can't hear it on yours.
Okay. I'm going to keep it open. I'm vibing to this rain. It's like pouring right now.
Yeah, the rain was coming in. Damn, that was leaking in real hard.
Wow, yeah, it is like pouring. That's wild.
Yeah.
Says I shouldn't be near water.
Probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably shouldn't.
Just leave a bucket outside. Collect some fresh rainwater, man.
Yeah, we could do fresh rainwater.
I'm down. Hey, conserve the water, man.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Is that illegal in some states?
I like it. I like it, Cece. I like where your head's at.
Yeah. Yeah, she works at a farm and had to take off Friday and Monday because of this wind and like the tornado. There was the tornado pretty close to her farm today. There was one that went through.
Wow.
Tornadoed or whatever, but
there's been tornadoes around the country today. There's already been some like damage and stuff like that. Like pretty intense, man, for everything going on.
Calls me from the basement. Is like, yeah, like what's going on in the world? I'm like, I don't know, probably like weather patterns and stuff that has happened for millennia and just happened to be during a human pandemic situation.
Right. I know, but it's like, damn, you really hope somebody that's not like home locked isn't gonna have a tree fall down or something like that.
I had a friend. Not even a friend, someone he knows. Wow, it's really coming down out there.
I was just saying the same thing. I'm watching it pour like outside of my
started at the same time as us, right? Yours started at the same time?
At 2:35. Yeah. We're both Eastern, right?
Yeah. So wow, it must be just tapping in.
It's everywhere. I mean, yeah, like I was talking to Jen, who's in Boston today, and it's pouring there as well. Like this is kind of everywhere right now. 'Cause
it's raining all over the world.
It's raining, man. Oh, I thought we were gonna do like a mashup.
Nope.
Okay, yeah. That's my favorite rain song. That's not yours.
It's up there. It's sure up there.
I think No Rain, Blind Melon probably would have the top spot.
Yeah, let's cut it right now because it is raining.
Actually, no. I'm gonna give the top spot to just the two of us, Bill Withers.
Okay, all right. For rain, is it a rain song?
Well, it just that first line, like, I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through. So,
right, there it is.
I did a little like bass video when he passed away last week, and I like included that lyric, and somebody was like, oh, "I'm really glad you did that." They're like, "I didn't realize those were the words," and it's very poetic.
It is poetic. Yeah, your bass stream the other day was cool. I liked "While My Bass Hit Me Weeps." It's a cool one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like that's a solo piece I've done for a while, and it was the first thing where I was like, that's something I could do on a stream. But like, I had to get a little more creative with the ditto looper and all that, and trying to like actually layer parts and stuff, so it's not just bass the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you have a pretty intense looping setup with the schwa sets too, right?
Yeah, I haven't really dug into it as much as I want to. I have that looping pedal I got just for like sound checks and stuff with Pigeons to mess around with that idea. But Ableton's nice because everything is coded to the next measure, so I don't really have to think or worry about it. It's just about getting controllers to loop it properly. But yeah, that's
you're looping within Ableton though, like setting up a live loop.
Everything's in Ableton. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff that we're looping.
Cool.
Yep.
Hey, Mark.
My dudes.
Hey, my
Matt,
man.
how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Pretty
Yeah.
good.
Busy?
I'm very busy.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what else you got going on besides the live lesson masters these days?
Well, I that's all I'm working on, and it's taking up all of my time. And it's like it's funny because when we started it, I went online, and Luke, I know you do lessons, so
Yeah.
I asked the fans if they wanted lessons, and I got an overwhelming response from it.
Right.
And then the next day I started to like work through like the logistics of it. Like I had to work through like the administrative portion, and there was like 50 people reached out to me, and like 25 of them seemed serious, like they really wanted to get into some lesson taking right away. And just the idea of having to schedule 25 people over 25 hours and figure out how to even work that in with what my kids had going on and what my wife's schedule was. And then, so I started to do it. I started to say, all right, Tuesday, let's go down the list. Is Tuesday at 10 okay? Is Tuesday at 12 okay? You know? And then I started thinking, oh man, I've got to take payment with all of these people. And then I'm going to figure out what platform we're on. And then I have to figure out how to like create all of these meetings. And it was an administrative nightmare. Like what happened was I realized that I had become more of the time was going to be spent on the administrative portion than was going to be spent in lessons. And I wanted to avoid that. I really wanted to avoid spending more time working outside of lessons than inside of lessons. So we built a platform, and now there's like 75 and almost it's going to be 100 artists on it in a couple of days. And so now we have a platform with 100 artists on it. And so it was the greatest all-time backfire, because talk about administrative work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I'm the co-founder of a tech startup,
Yeah.
and I'm working in the lessons. And instead of administrating my 20 lessons a week, I'm helping administrate an entire business right now. So
Right.
it didn't make me less busy. It
Yeah.
made me more busy to create. If I had just built a website for myself, and only included myself in it, and not turned it, it didn't turn it into, it just turned in organically into a business. Then I would have saved myself a lot of time. But instead, I've created a lot of work. And
Speaking from a
great,
personal experience, I can say that it's been very helpful for me to kind of get me to connect with my instrument in a new way. I've wanted to teach lessons for a while, but never really felt confident about doing it. I wanted to offer good enough service, and I actually just started taking lessons from my original bass teacher last week to like, hey, I need to learn bass, but teach me how to teach too.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's first of all, there's like overcoming that idea of, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Not like technically good enough, but like as a teacher, like, am I going to what do I have to offer?
Yeah.
The funny thing was I really didn't know the answer to that question when I started this out, but over the course of doing this for 4 weeks, I've learned so much about myself, both as a bass player and as a musician and as a team member, and as a teacher and instructor. Like I've learned that there's an enormous value for the fans of a band that are musicians to get first-hand insight into what it is that's going on in the band that they love. So just first and foremost, outside of whether or not I, have the theory based, which I went to jazz school for a year, so I have a certain level of theory based and on rhythmic understanding, that I have all kinds of exercises and scales and stuff that I can teach people. But being able to apply something that you're teaching, like taking the major scale and teaching it is one thing, and then saying, okay, now we're going to go up and we're going to do Dorian and we're going to do Phrygian, and you can teach the patterns, and you could try to connect for people the fact that Dorian is the same notes as the Ionian scale, just starting on the second scale tone, and there's ways on the bass to show them that, rather than like going from the first position of major to the sliding up the A string to the D there off of C major. I'm teaching C major modes, sliding up to D and then getting a whole new pattern because of the way that the bass is strung. I'm trying to keep people in their first position and show them that starting on the D and playing the same exact scale is how you get D Dorian, and starting on the E and just go from the E to the C. And there's E Phrygian. You just got to, once we move it over here to the 7th fret of the A string and we're starting on the E there, you're going to have another string so you can add the D and the E on top. But I want you to see the scale in the context of the pattern of C major so that you can continue to grasp the concept that this is all C major. We're working in one key through all of these different scales. But then the really exciting part is stopping on D Dorian and talking about what songs employ a D Dorian scale. And these are songs that people know already.
Right.
And on Dorian, I'm starting them in with milestones and so what, and like impressions, and taking them through a history lesson of Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And then, in 1970, when Miles Davis now has the Electric Band, he goes out on, this was the 50-year anniversary actually this week of the Dead and Miles Davis playing 4 shows together.
Wait, what?
And then, yeah, right. Miles Davis opened for the Dead 50 years ago this last weekend. So
wow.
When you put it into context, the historical significance of Miles Davis going on stage before the Grateful Dead and then jamming in D Dorian basically and playing group improv on electric instruments, which is what Bitches Brew and that style of jazz fusion is, it puts into context where the Grateful Dead got the idea to even be doing these psychedelic group improv modal jams, and then you fast forward down to Fish and then into bands like, the Biscuits and, and all the other young jam bands that also sit in D Dorian or A Dorian and just play, like funk jams in Dorian mode or whatever it is. And then for Phrygian, it gets really fun because the Biscuits have like 6 like mainstay popular songs that are kind of a Phrygian mode thing. And I'm trying to, then I'll stop on E Phrygian and be like, this is Basis for a Day. This is Rock Candy. This is Caterpillar. Listen to the scale. Now listen to the song. Hear what you already know. You know this. So like these are people who will say, I don't know my modes. Bass players that have been playing for 5, 10, 15 years that don't know their modes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll say, this is why I would like to teach the modes first and foremost is because you already do know them.
Yeah.
You know all of these songs. You know Terrapin Station, that's Lydian Jam. You know Cassidy, it's a Lydian Jam. You know Reba is Lydian to Mixolydian. You know all of these modes already. You know how they make you feel. You know how they sound. You just haven't connected what you're listening to your instrument and your brain to your fingers. And so going through and teaching that way, it's been a joy. And it's been a joy, I think, for me, and it's been a joy, hopefully, for the fans. You know what I mean? I feel like some of them are really, like, embracing these concepts, and others are kind of like, hey, bro, I'm just here to, like, hang out and, take one bass lesson with somebody I was a fan of. Stop making me do scales,
The first one I had, he had his wife with him. They were in the kitchen. He did approach it like a lesson, but she was just kind of there, too, like, cool, I get to see, how they interact and like what's it like.
The wife's always off screen. I've learned this week there's something they're always looking at over to the side when something funny happens or whatever it is. There's
it's the wife there,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Brownie, I think that's a really good point with these lessons. Some of my students, they're enrolled in classes like Scott's bass lessons and things like that. And these kind of courses where it's like it's not a catered individual lesson. It's like a curriculum,
Yep.
So these students are like, yeah, I learn these modes, I learn these scales or these techniques, but they want that personal connection. They want to discuss it with somebody, and especially a musician that they look up to and they enjoy their music. Like, how do you apply this context? Yeah, you can look up online how to play a Dorian mode, but they want to study with somebody and put it into context. Here's a song that the Biscuits play that is in a Dorian mode. I think that kind of connection is what these fans and these students and just people in general in this time are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, and like you say, like if you want to learn the modes, then they're there. You
Right.
know, they're all there. It's all on YouTube. The whole thing is available in a non-personal, non-one-on-one setting, which brings me to what it really is about. It's a experiential type of a situation. You know, always hear millennials love experiences. They don't buy things, they buy experiences. Well, this is an experience, you know, going one-on-one with somebody that you look up to. And there's so many musicians on the platform at this point that have this going on now, that they have their own fans, and these fans are able to book really unique, not ever before available experiences. And I can't speak for you, Ben, or I know that I see your name on our sign up sheet, Luke, but
Yep.
that when this is Corona thing is over, I just feel like this is something I've wanted to do before Corona came along, and I didn't have the tools to do it. I wasn't sure if I believed in myself. I felt vulnerable even putting it out there that I'd be looking for additional revenue streams when, you know what I mean? When you're like a well-known musician and you kind of want to have there be an image of what things are like. But what I found out by kind of facing the vulnerability of this, and the Biscuits had come off of already canceling a tour because of my eye, and we largely didn't tour in 2019. So we got to the first day of Corona, and I was like, all right, how many more months can I go for out working before I get uncomfortable with the idea that I'm not working? We've been working for 25 years. I can take off 6 months like we did last year, or another 3 months like we have this year. But now it's 9 months that I've been off in the last, 17 months or something.
Right.
How many more is it going to be before I start to feel uncomfortable? And the answer was not a lot. And I want not that many more months before I start going into full blown panic attack about not working. And I'm being realistic about how long this might be. Look, people might get back to work next month. Not us.
No, absolutely not.
We're not going back to work, not for a while. Let's be honest about it. There's shows that are booked in July. I hope that those shows happen.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
an
scheduled for that.
epidemiologist or virologist. I really don't know how this is going to play out, but I am a prepare for the worst and hope for the best type of a person. And in thinking like that, on day one, I was like, all right, now is the moment where I'm going to figure out all of the things that I need to figure out to know, are there people, is there demand for teaching? Number one, for somebody like me, what's the platform going to be like? What's the administrative process? I'm just going to dive in head first and see what it is. And what I found out was that once I declared that I was going to do that, I saw like at least 3 or 4 followers of like my page over the next 24 hours make similar posts, other musicians that were like, I know that they saw my post, and there's a certain level of, okay, there's an idea. Maybe it wasn't a unique idea. Maybe somebody else thought of it. Maybe they didn't even see my post and did the same thing at the same time, totally legit, no matter how it happened. But what I noticed was people were starting to say like, okay, this is A, an avenue. B, maybe I don't need to feel so vulnerable about this. And I started reaching out to other big musicians. And what I started realizing was we're all in the same boat. Nobody wants to not work for a year. Everybody, whether you're at the smaller level jam band or the biggest, I don't want to say the biggest, but the bigger level, mid-level jam bands, it scales. The bigger ones have houses that they own and 3 kids or 4 kids, and nobody felt comfortable looking forward, and nobody wanted to sit at home waiting to figure out what was going to happen with small business loans or whatever. Like it was going to be whatever the options. People don't want to sit around and do nothing. So everybody's trying to find their time to fill their time creatively, make tracks with the people that are in your bands, go on Instagram Live, give lessons. There's a lot of it.
And I remember being for a long time, this, like you said about the vulnerability thing, feeling vulnerable about certain things. Now we have something, it's a choice between discomforts. Like I don't want to be uncomfortable putting myself out there with lessons or figuring out how to stream my side project and, put all that work in. But what's the alternative is not doing anything, having, revenues dry up and worrying both what I'm going to do and how I'm going to kind of move forward. So it's sort of pushing us out of our comfort zone in an interesting
And
way.
where are we coming from? I gotta get a drink. Can you grab me a right, Zach?
I'll have one for you, Brownie. I got some water right here, bub.
I got my tea from yesterday. It's nice and cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that people enjoy watching seeing this level of vulnerability from their heroes or just their contemporaries or their peers, and seeing people try to adapt and embrace new things. I mean, what Ben and I were talking before, I did my first live bass stream over the weekend, and that was something I never would have even thought about before. Who wants to hear me like play bass riffs for an hour? Right. But it made me completely rethink the process and set up my looping pedal and think, okay, how can I make this interesting and engaging? And I did it like an interactive Q&A. But I think that for the long, what we'll see coming out of this, the other side, to whatever degree that is and whenever that is that musicians have taken that step to put themselves out there more and to connect with fans in a different way. And I think that that is something that everybody is going to hang on to for the long term. I mean, I know that we all want to get back on the road, but these lessons, everyone that's doing it is feeling personally fulfilled. And whether or not you have the same time, I'm sure you want to continue doing this.
I definitely want to continue. And in fact, that was like some of the first comments that I got from the first 10 or 15 people on the platform. Everybody had that aha moment where it was like, this is something that I can do from my hotel room. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's right. If you're giving lessons in person, it's you know, there's a certain level of privacy that you might want as one of the guys in Humphreys McGee. But once they realize that this is going to be something that's done online, you have that privacy that's built in. So, and really, again, you're looking at this as a fan engagement platform. So you want to have that kind of, that level, that barrier of privacy built in. But once you have that level of privacy and all of the admin is dealt with, and you can do this remotely from whether it's your home because you're stuck in your home, or it's the backstage or the back of the bus,
right? Because
it's noon and sound check doesn't happen until 4 p.m. Now, listen, we're coming from a decade where largely, and like Ben, I know largely over the last decade, you guys have been building a brand and getting out and touring 150 shows a year or whatever it is. But largely our culture has been looking at their phones, engrossed in some sort of a social media. Mm-hmm. And I hang out in a lot of backstages, and I know that you guys have had this experience before. You're sitting in the backstage, you're on your phone, and then you look up for a second, and there's 7 or 10 people, and they're all sitting on different chairs, and they're all sitting there staring at their phone, you know? And so in a world where the creators are all kind of checked out and sitting on their phone, to what I've learned in the last 4 weeks is that when you take your phone and you put it down, upside down, somewhere away from where you are, and you start opening up your computer, possibly getting into your Ableton, which I know you live in your Ableton, Luke, or Logic, or wherever you live. I know that you live in your DAW. I know that what's happening here is you start thinking about all that other time. And I don't consider time, I'm like Gary V. Like, I don't consider time spent figuring out how Instagram works as time wasted, because you are building a platform there and you're building a community there. Yeah. So, but certainly there's many hours during the day when you're on stage where you could just grab your computer, grab your bass, plug it into, a mini interface, run on the back of the bus or stay in your hotel and teach a couple lessons. And if you do that 5 or 7 times a week over the course of the week, you still have more than ample time to build your online platform. You still are at soundcheck an hour and a half early. And then you're coming home from tour with an additional revenue stream. And for bands that are growing and building, and I know both of you know what this is like, you're going out on the road, you are selling a couple thousand tickets, Pigeons is killing it, your guarantees are going up, you're trying to keep your ticket price low, but you're in a bus and now your lighting guy is doing a killer job, and you want to kind of give him enough to work with to make it look great. And we all know what that looks like after settle up. We
Yeah.
all know what that looks like after settle up. And the veneer of rock stardom, once you get home and you start working through the spreadsheets, it's different how it looks on stage and how it looks on the bottom line.
Because you're constantly reinvesting in the project itself. So, like you said, when you scale up to having houses and kids, you have to reinvest the money you've made in your life now.
When Pigeons opened for Conspirator at the Sonar or whatever, Baltimore Soundstage, I walked up to your van at the end of the night, and I gave you guys 2 pieces of advice. One was a joke and one was serious. Do you remember what they were?
I remember, I think we were just blown away. You came into our green room and said you guys were watching our set, and we were all like, oh my God, Marc Brownstein was watching our set and he enjoyed it. So I don't know if I clung to anything else other than how.
So at the end of the night, you guys were driving away in your van, and I walked up to the window, and I don't know if it was Greg or Jeremy, but they both remember the advice. I've asked them, and the advice was this. Number 1, you can't wear pajamas on stage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was the Electric Factory in Philly. I remember that one.
Oh, that one? Okay. And number 2, I said, don't get a tour bus until you could afford 2 tour buses.
Yeah.
It was probably the best advice I've ever given any young band. And I watched you guys for the next 5 years. And Jeremy actually told me that, like a couple of years later, that he really took that advice to heart, that he really like internalized what I was trying to say was, don't worry about looking like rock stars, because what's more important is building the business in a smart way. What's more important than appearing like you have enough money to be on a bus and feeling like, wow, we've made it. We do 2,000 people every night and now we're on a bus. If you make that jump from a van, which costs like $800 a week or $0 a week if you're using, your bass player's van, which is where they usually get it. I don't know whose van your van was, but
I helped find it. Well, Jeremy found the new one, but me and Greg drove up to New Jersey and found our shitty old one, and that's how we got ours. But we
right, and you guys held on to that thing for a while, and I remember seeing you guys again and being like, wow, these guys are big to be in a van. I'm so proud of them for making that decision and building.
That's one of the reasons we're in a slightly okay position, is because we did wait long enough. And that really did stick with us, because you can't really scale back comfort levels. Like once you get to a certain point, you're going to want to be used to that, and you feel it too. So if you're building up and, slowly moving forward, we did the same thing with, financial aspects too. It's like, wait until not till you can afford it, but till you absolutely can't even, you don't have to think about it. Like, obviously we can give ourselves a little bit of a raise now, because we've been waiting so long and building it. And that's honestly, as funny as it is that you said something about the pajama pants. I think Greg does just wear it to be comfortable, but it does create this, like, casual, we're just here hanging out, with you guys too.
We're just here to have fun. The pajama pants thing was just a joke.
Yeah. I stopped wearing pajama pants
The bus thing was
a while back, because I don't want to get pegged to like one look or image. But if that's one you're getting pegged to, at least you're comfortable while you're doing it. So,
listen, you look great now that you're not wearing pajama pants. I gotta say, it's
the Ben Carey style is steezing, man. You got the Ben Carey.
You've got great style. I'm not going to tell you what to wear or not. The joke was
right.
Back in the day, Paper Diamond, Numa opened for us, and Alex Botwin, the bass player of Numa, was wearing sweatpants on stage, and not like cool, like now everyone has like cool looking like
jogger sweatpants.
They were they're probably back in style. They were like Champion sweatpants, but they were like gray and they were like really
light gray
hanging down. And I just was like, hey, dude, you can't wear sweatpants on stage. And he took it to heart and changed like his whole style up.
Yeah.
And so I always thought it was funny that I could tell somebody to change their style and that they would even listen to me. So that was what I was riffing on with the pajama pants thing. But eventually Paper Diamond went back to wearing sweatpants on stage, and he saw me and it's like, I'm back.
I'm back, baby. Well, I remember that Electric Factory show. I think it was Electric Factory. Either way, it was somewhere in Philly. But that's where you and I first connected too, and sort of talked about, how you got to where you are. And I really, even that just quick interaction with you, musician to musician, kind of adds towards what we're doing now with the chill sessions and with the lessons. It's like you're just a regular dude who just happened to get into this position. You work hard and you make it what you are. But to kind of work with students, bring it back to the live lesson masters, like it's not just, you know, you can go online and find lessons, but to be able to talk to someone who's doing what you want to do. I remember when I would first see Lotus and Disco Biscuits and, you know, bands like that back at the 930 Club. When I was in college, I looked up like, this is amazing. I want to do this too. And to be able to talk to someone's like what, not only just musically, like understanding what modes are and what they do. I think when we were touring with Twiddle, they call Dorian Trey Minor, which I think is pretty funny.
They call it Trey Manor.
Trey Minor. So it's like minor, but like, you know, it's the you know, Dorian, which you kind of, and a lot of
that's the thing that ties together Miles Davis, John Coltrane, the Grateful Dead, Fish, and the Disco Biscuits. This is what I'm trying to teach, is that Impressions doesn't sound like any of these jam bands, and the Grateful Dead don't sound like Fish, and Fish doesn't sound like the Disco Biscuits. But what's tying it together is group improv over Dorian scales. And the Biscuits, we bump it up to Phrygian and use that a lot. And all of the bands jam over Lydian, you know what I mean? And mix a Lydian, forget it, you know what I mean? Like Weekapog, I don't know how Weekapog goes. Haven't sat down and tried to figure it out, but it sure as hell sounds like it's probably a Mixolydian jam, you know what I mean? It's just like a 1-7-4 Mixolydian jam. It's like, you know, like the end of most, like Run Like Hell, how we play it, or the end of Basis, or any of the end of our big, like, joyous, triumphant Pinks. But yeah, teaching.
But, you know, it works though, and that's what you're trying to show people and teach people. Is like, here's what works. Like
Trey
one of my first lessons early on was my bass teacher was like, so most modern music is in some form of blues pentatonic with, you know, usually a major sixth thrown in there, and that's almost all of our songs from an early time. Is like, what route are we in? Where are we going? And then I would just use that shape and just mess around with it. You know, being wrong sometimes, but that's, you know, jamming is being wrong for the right reasons, or, you know, intentionally getting to the certain point. As long as you know what you're doing
wrong
for a while.
So, like, you're never wrong is what I learned on the first day of jazz school. I'll tell the story. I've told a couple of my students this story. My first ensemble teacher was named Arnie Lawrence, saxophone player, and this is how he started the semester, my first semester at school. And we're like, I was in like the beginner ensemble. They didn't really let beginner students into this jazz school, but my bass teacher went to the new school jazz program, and I didn't really pass the audition, but he convinced them to let me in.
You went to the new
and
school
then when
in New York, Brownie?
Yeah, I did for a year.
I auditioned for that and didn't get in. That was the most intense audition process I've ever had. It was like a pianist and a drummer. I was playing like some jazz standard, but the way that nothing was straight ahead. Like they were playing with such a minimal, abstract style. I was completely lost.
I was lost too, and I didn't get in either. And then my bass teacher who went to the people who ran it and were like, listen, this is a student of mine. He's a really fast learner. He's a really good student. Can you make an exception for him? So they did, but then what they needed to do was they needed to make an exception for 4 other people so that there was an ensemble for me to play with. So they took 4 other players that didn't get in, and they let them in so that there would be a beginner ensemble for that next year. Cool. And then I had this ensemble, and the 5 of us, we had no idea what we were doing. And we were all in the class on the first day, and we were all, here we are in jazz school. And our teacher walks in, and he looks at us, and he goes, it's the first thing he says, rest in peace, Arnie Lawrence. He says, there are no wrong notes. And then a horn goes outside, like we're in New York. It's on 5th Avenue, 13th Street, and like a car horn goes, and he grabs his saxophone and goes, like that. And he goes, there's music everywhere. It's just like, this guy's a trip. And then he goes, look, what's that noise? So he said, let me explain what I mean by there are no wrong notes, okay? And he's like, you're playing Dorian scale. We don't even know what that means. And you're playing the scale, and you're in D Dorian, and instead of hitting the B, you hit a B flat, right? So, like, it's a quote-unquote wrong note, but all you got to do is next time you come back around, hit that B flat again, and then you hit that B flat a third time, it's not a wrong note anymore. Now you're in D Aeolian. You know what I mean? You're not playing a wrong note. You're playing a new scale. You've changed the key. And so every time a student is playing a scale now and they hit a wrong note, I stop them and make sure they understand. I'm like, stop. That's not a wrong note. You just, now what you're in is F major. You know, you just changed keys. It's pretty cool. We do it all the time in our jams. Somebody will be in Dorian and somebody will hit the flat 6, and then everybody will jump on that. And then we've jumped up a fourth, and now we went from C major to F major. We're still in D. Right. You know, we're in a D mode, but we went from D Dorian to D Aeolian. So we went from C major to F major. No wrong notes, just different keys. And any scale is like that. Any scale that you're in, if you hit the wrong 7 or the wrong 6 or the wrong 2 or the wrong 4, you're just changing the key.
Right.
That's all you're doing.
It's like the Jimi Hendrix quote: "If you hit a wrong note, play it twice, and then it's not a wrong note anymore."
That's why it's wrong note anymore, because you just established a new scale, and that's it. You know, I love this Trey minor thing. When I was starting out, I had a chance to, like, I was going to see Fish, and the same thing as you're describing, I'm looking up on stage at the Roseland in New York City where I first saw Fish, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to play. You know what I mean? This is what I want to do. And a couple of years after that, so that was 1993. Like 1995, the Biscuits are now existing. We're playing a show at the TLA. That was a post-Fish show. And the next day, Fish had off, and they were hanging out at the Four Seasons in Philly. One of my friends, like a friend of a friend, was like, hey, I'm going to hang out with Mike Gordon. You want to come and hang out? And I went to Mike Gordon's hotel room at the Seasons. And I remember a couple of things about the hang. Basically, I remember everything about it. I was like going in to meet my idol at the time. But getting to sit down and talk with him a little bit about being in a band, and you know, I wouldn't call Mike Gordon my mentor, but like in a lot of ways he is my mentor without knowing it. And that first talk we had, he put his bass in my hand. Like, he knew I played bass. I was in the Disco Biscuits, and he handed me his bass in his hotel room, and it was like, here. Then he started quizzing me. And it was scary at first. I was like, man, I didn't really know that much about bass at this time. You know what I mean? Like, I did spend a year in music school. The first question he asked was a softball. He was like, what's the most important note in the scale? And I was like, the root. And he's like, that's the other most important note. And I was like, the fifth. I was like, I know this one. The fifth. And he was like, the fifth. He was like, listen, you could just get away with just playing the 1 and the 5 the whole time. You know what I mean? And then he like asked me to like jam on his bass a little, and I did. It was fun. Then he played me some Grey Boy All-Stars, and he's like, this is my favorite band that I like to listen to. He was like, my favorite band is this band, the Grey Boy All-Stars. And I'd heard of them and was like, oh, this is super cool. They were going through this like funk renaissance. This was this was fall of 97 at this point. So it was 4 years after I first saw them, and, you know, and had been in music school. And then we went down to his bus. Like, he's like, why don't we go down to the bus, you know? Mm-hmm. And we went down to the bus, me and this girl, Melissa, and him, and he played us this video that kind of explained. I hadn't said anything to him about it because I wasn't really into what Fish was doing at that time. Like, I had come from like the 93, 94, 95 school, like Machine Gun Trey and like really like crazy wild jams. And they had just on a dime slowed it way down and started playing funk jams all day, like these start-stop things. And I started to see that every show had that 97 cow funk kind of a vibe to it. It was fall 97. It's the most famous tour of all time because of this thing. It was the most popular thing in the world for new fans and old fans alike. It wasn't my thing at the time. Sure. I had something in my brain that was preventing me from liking it. It was like I was acting jaded as a fan about it. And then he sat me down and he's like, hey, I want to show you this video. it's this James Brown video, and this Fishman's been watching it every day. So he puts the video on, and we watch the James Brown video, and he's like, man, we just started watching this at the beginning of the tour. Every day we come back in the bus and we watch this James Brown video. And now we've like started to try to emulate it on stage. And like, and now like in every jam, we're just like trying to emulate this James Brown video and just get really good at playing funk. And I was like, I was blown away. I was like, wow, I can't believe, like, I don't know how many people know this. I mean, I'm telling you guys and whoever listens to the podcast,
why they
I
switched.
don't know how many people understand like what had come before this abrupt shift in the way that Fish was jamming. And as like a fan of the band, I got to get into a room with this guy and actually have him show me the video that had such a profound influence on what they were doing, which put it into perspective for me as a fan and opened me up personally to what they were doing. Then I was like, man, this is super fucking cool. And I got this back, like, inside look at how Fish is jamming right now. And I kind of have never forgotten that moment, obviously. And I've played with Mike a bunch of times and had the pleasure of hanging out with him a handful of times over the years. And but that experience of having him sit there and kind of talk to me about how they're jamming and show me where they were getting it from, I'm sort of rehaving that experience right now with fans who are coming onto the platform and learning from me. Who they're telling me, like, oh man, the experience of sitting here and working through the jams with you and trying to get an understanding of how you get from E Phrygian to A Mixolydian and a basis for a day jam is mind blowing. And I'm thinking, yeah, I totally have had the same experience with the band that I was most into at the time when I was going to see concerts, actively constant.
Now you're creating an environment where other people, like not just one-on-one, but you can start doing this with 25 people at a time and spread out, your message. And one thing I love about music is each new generation can take what they love about the old generation or the previous one that's, concurrent, but then I love what you did and here's where I'm going to take it. And to me, that's one of the joys of music itself. And that's why this Live Lessons Masters thing is so attractive to me and to others, is it really helps kind of spread that musical message outward.
Well, like your low end Zen with Ben situation, you know what I mean? Like you're like, what happened was I came at it from the lessons angle. And then when I talked to Pony and Alicia and I got on a call together, and we were at first, how we were doing it was the artist would get on a Zoom just like this with Alicia and I, and we would get onto the website and go in and manually enter all of their schedules. Like, what do you want your schedule to be like? And we would just sit and talk with them. And Pony said, and like, creativity begets creativity. Pony was like, this is super cool, but I just want to address one thing. Like, most of my fans don't play bass. I bet a lot of them would like to just crack open a cold Budweiser at 7:30 at night and kind of have 20 minutes to chill. Right. And we were like, chill. That was it. We were like, yes, of course. We were of course going to make that an option. Let's do it. And we put into Pony's chill, basic stasic hangout. And we added the chilling briefly with Brownie. And then as we were onboarding new artists, we just pointed it out to them. If you want to add in a different category and a different offering, tell us how long you'd like to do it for, and tell us, what you'd like it to be all about, how much you'd like to charge for it. And now we have dozens of artists offering these meet and greets on the platform. You know what I mean? It wasn't.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting things too, Brownie, because, like you said, like I give private lessons. I applied for the Live Lesson Masters thing. I love the message. I really want to be a part of the network. But I think this chilling with your artists is so cool. Like if you had told a music fan 3 months ago, hey, you're going to have an opportunity where you can sign up and hang out with your favorite musician and talk about whatever you want, I think they would have said like, no way. Like, I can't do that. It seems like such a novel concept that's now becoming normal. And it's like it's so cool. Like, just to hear you tell that story about Mike is so cool. Like, at Berkeley, for me, some of my favorite teachers and lessons were when I didn't have a bass in my hand. Like the great Danny Morris, Demo plays bass, shout out. Like, I know Chuck Jones from Dopapod, Dan Africano, a lot of us studied with him. I didn't take lessons with him, but he had these class survey of bass seminars, and we would analyze and talk music, where I'd bring in a Jay Dilla track and would be like, this, I'm really digging Donuts right now, this track. And he's like, well, let's talk about the bass. He taught me how to listen to music and how he listened to music. And that can be just as eye-opening a thing as working with an instrument in your hands. How to listen to music. How do your idols listen to music?
Mm-hmm.
Funny, I hope some of these students don't mind that I've taken up their whole first lesson just talking to them and not ever giving them a chance to touch their bass, because when they tell me that they're really just here because they want to, they don't really want to learn bass, they just want to quickly learn like the best way to throw down like a 3-chord progression on bass so that they could jam guitar soloing over it. And my first question is, do you know your modes? And when their answer is no, I then spend an hour explaining to them why I can't help them without them understanding their modes. And yesterday I spent a whole hour with one dude, different dudes, kind of walking them through the different modes, connecting it to the songs that they know already. And they never touched their bass once. It was just like, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to teach you. And the reason I have to teach it to you is because you can't solo over changes. Like, I could sit here and go A, you know, C, 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 D, D, D. I could like give you a simple 1, 3, 4 chord progression, right? But what kind of A is this? Is it just pentatonic? Because so then you can't solo using a 6 or a 2 without really like getting into what mode you're in. And then is it a major 6? Because if it's the major 6 in the A, if you're an A Dorian, then that C is actually a Lydian C, and then the D is Mixolydian. There's an F sharp in this scale, not an F. It's essential. It's just a 1-note difference between that F sharp and the F. If it's an F, then you're an Aeolian, and now you're actually in C major.
Right.
You know,
your approach changes.
Not G major. Well, if you want to solo over A to C, C, C to D, 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 you need to know if you're, once the chord changes come in, you need to know if you're in C major, if you're in G major. But, you know, are you soloing with an F or an F sharp? And this is an essential piece of the puzzle to soloing over changes. And it's an essential piece of the puzzle when people come to me and they say, hey, I want to just learn how to write some chord changes while jamming. And then, oh, you know, how does the neck open up? Like, how do I know what notes to play? Do you know your modes? No.
You're laying the foundation for, I mean, that's what you do as a bass player, but also with music. Like, that's why I started on piano, and I still see the keys, you know, like the notes when I'm playing, I see the patterns on bass, but I see the notes on a keyboard.
Me too.
But to like, you have to lay the foundation in order to understand music as a whole. And I'm so grateful I found bass as my instrument and have, you know, delved into it as much as I have. Because like you said, there's some bassists who don't know the modes for 5, 10, 15 years. I understood what they were. It's on some level, but then I find them like, oh, I'm switching from a major 6 to a minor 6 in Dorian. I'm going from Dorian to Aeolian, just like you said. And I've been doing that by ear so long that when I finally it becomes goes from wrong to intentionally.
But if you do it by ear, it's great to do it by ear. But the thing that is for me is if you go from A Dorian to A Aeolian, great. Okay, now you're jamming an A Aeolian. But if you're just in A, it's one thing. But if I bring in an like A and then I go to an F and a D, it's kind of important to know in A Aeolian, which is C major, that F is a F Lydian and that D is D Dorian, because now it opens the whole neck up to when you go to the F, you're not just stuck playing F and C.
You can go around in that scale. Yeah.
You can play phrases over the scale and then move to the D and play a phrase in Dorian, then come back down to your Aeolian. And for a guitar, I have guitarists that are studying with me, learning this like jamming technique. And I'll tell them, listen, all of that doesn't mean anything to you. You're just in C major. You know what I mean? You need to kind of hear where the C major notes land in terms of chord tones of these changes, but you're not going Aeolian, F Lydian, D Dorian. And I know for some people who will listen to this podcast, that is totally over your head. And for sure, it should be over people's heads. It's guess what? It's over most musicians' heads.
Well, it's like times tables. You have to understand it and drill it so that you're not thinking about like, okay, I'm in, the Ionian and I want to go to the Mixolydian in the same key, and then how does that shift? You don't think about it. You just let your fingers and your
right. Well, I'm now analyzing what we've been doing and discovering that, like you say, by ear, we are employing these techniques, but also in analyzing it, I'm getting a deeper understanding of what all the scales are and all of these different chord changes. And I feel like when we get back out onto stage, I'm going to have a better grasp of the whole entire neck when bringing in chord changes, because I will now do the math. Now I'm going to sit there for a second and say, okay, we are in Tre Dorian right now, which is G major, which means that C that I'm bringing up has an F sharp. That C that I'm bringing in is going to be Lydian, and that's going to give a depth to our jamming at this point where I can go to that 4 and confidently know that if we're in Tre Dorian, that C has an F sharp in it, and that's gonna make certain jams that we've done over the years more emotive and give me more options of what to do.
You also let your ear kind of lead into that as well. Like, this is what I hear. Why am I hearing that? Oh, it's because I'm shifting to this, rather than just doing it because it sounds right. And you have a much bigger map. Like, it's sort of like a microscope. You have the 5X and you have the 25X. We've been jamming at 5X, but we're going to see a lot more specific what's going on in the picture.
And one thing I'm telling people is this: listen, if you don't want to put the time in, then just play pentatonic.
Go back to the blues scale, man. Brownie, you're changing a whole generation's view from just playing the blues scale over everything to start using their noggins a little bit more, man. Yeah, and that's something I wanted to ask you about that too. Do you find Ben and I talk about it, teaching is learning as well, and it makes you analyze your own playing and your own things, and okay, this is something that I want to dive more into. Do you find yourself, I love hearing that you have all these new concepts that you're going to start looking at and taking into an improv approach. Do you find yourself just feel like you're getting better and playing more and maybe writing more solo stuff like that from teaching so much?
Yeah, well, I have one student that's he's 17 years old and he studies jazz, and he's got his head is so far ahead of his fingers. He's very fast. He's in a Grateful Dead cover band. But when I slowed him down to 60 beats per minute and turned the metronome on, he couldn't do it. Like, he was really shaky. But he's like he rips and understands theory very well. So for him, my first thing was, hey, dude, let's slow this all the way down. And let's get you locked into a really slow metronome. Because once you can play eighth notes at 50 beats per minute, then you could do that really tight. Then we can speed it back up and your playing is going to sound completely differently.
Harder to keep time slow than fast a lot of the time.
Way harder. It's not a lot of the time, all of the time.
All the time,
it's harder to keep time slow. So I've been putting people on at 75 beats per minute on a metronome and saying, when you get this, don't go to 80, go to 70.
That's exactly what...
Opposite direction. Go from 75 to 70 to 65 to 60. And when you could do it at 50, then we're going to go back up to a normal tempo. And by the way, this kid took me seriously. And in a week, his playing improved so much from the first time I met him. In a week. In 3 weeks, it's like the kid's going to be one of the best. He's 17. He's going to be one of the best bass players in the country. He's unbelievable. But I'm giving him these kind of advanced arpeggio exercises that I've do for myself that I've either gotten online or created my own exercises, and he's just crushing through them in every mode. Like he's doing arpeggios in all of the like major arpeggios, minor arpeggios, 7 arpeggios, Locrian arpeggios, and he's going up like over a swing, and he's crushing it and at any speed in every key. Okay, after a week. So yes, then I have to be like, all right, this kid's ripping through my stuff. So I'm going and finding new exercises that I don't even know just to stay on top of him. I'm stumping him at the beginning of every lesson with something that I've been spending 7 or 8 days working through myself to get super, super proficient over. Cool. But yeah, it's Monday. And I've got him on Thursday, and I've got 3 days to come up with yet a new one because he's right now is ripping through the beast, which is doing the major scale, 3 notes, each string, starting on the E, so like E, F, G, and then A, B, C, and then E, S, D, E, F, and then G, A, B, and then down the major scale, and then continuing up and down the whole entire neck through C major. 3 notes on each string, and it opened up the way that I look at C major on the neck right now. It's a whole different pattern when you're playing these scales 3 notes on each string rather than playing them in the pattern that you know them, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C is different than taking it starting on an E or starting on a G. What C major starting on a G in 3 notes? It starts on a G and the next note is an A and the next note is a B. So it's a 5 fret stretch. So I'm looking at the neck in a new way that I've never looked at it. And this is forcing me to go out and find new exercises that I haven't done before. Probably should have done all of them already, but I've been busy being in a jam band.
That's why I'm taking lessons, because I'm afraid, Jeremy talked about lessons when he was doing them a year or 2 ago. He's like, he has a jazz student too who's pushing him beyond what he even knows, and he's like, well, I gotta learn more. And so I'm haven't gotten to that point yet. I've only had 2 lessons, but I figure someone's gonna come along who's gonna, just like you said, force me to stay 1 week ahead of him, basically.
I'm trying to stay 1 week ahead of Joey. And his dad booked him like 6 or 7 lessons right off the bat. Cool. So I've still got a couple more weeks with him. And I hope he'll stay on. Like what I'm going to start doing now is the next week with him, we're going to sit down at the beginning of the lesson and we're going to start working through Cassidy by the Grateful Dead, which has which I really love because the verse of Cassidy starts in major and then goes to minor. Same, it's like a key change. It goes from E major to A major, and then E minor to A minor. And then when you get into the jam is in Lydian. So it's employing, it employs a lot of different kind of key changes and mode changes and modal jamming, and it has some cool like rhythmic stuff. So I told him last week, I was like, we're going to learn Cassidy next week. Probably he's just going to show up on Thursday knowing Cassidy completely.
Well, yeah, that's so cool though, Brownie. I love that concept of like pushing each other. It's the same. I have a student later, Billy. He's a really talented studying jazz at Middlebury College in Vermont. And he's got great theory, but we like to do what you talked about, getting back to basics. Hey,
back to basics.
But he transcribed this Phil Lesh solo, "Eyes of the World," that we're gonna get into. And for me, like transcribing is a really difficult thing. But my background isn't in the Grateful Dead. I'm aware of it, I love it, I admire it, but it's not my background like it is for him. So I'm learning from him about like how did you transcribe it? What do you find Phil's like licks to be like that? So when you get to that dynamic of student and teacher, where it's not just okay, I'm teaching you everything, and it's not just the sensei Padawan kind of thing. You're pushing each other to learn and to step out of your comfort zone and your boxes. That's when that real growth happens, and that's what's so cool about the teaching dynamic, I found.
Yeah, and I definitely opened up my last lesson with, hey man, I went and found a really cool exercise, and I spent the week working on it, and I don't 100% have it down. I'm going to show it to you slow right now, but if I were to speed this up to my fastest speed, I'm going to probably miss a couple notes as well. The guy who taught it to me played it 5 times, and missed a note every single time, you know, 1 or 2 notes, and then he would like circle the notes he missed on the replay of the video.
Well, you're learning it together, and like learning those things together is it goes back to this whole musicians opening themselves up to be more vulnerable, where we're figuring out that that's okay. Like one of the most inspiring moments for me this year was I got to see Tool perform their new album at Mohegan Sun, and they were fucking up the songs. And I see like the guitarist Adam Jones looking at Danny Carey like as they're missing hits, and me and my drummer Rory are saying, they were like, we're watching Tool fuck up their new songs. This is so cool. Like they're humans, you know?
Right, and that's the thing with a band like Tool, where like the image is all perfection, and also like it like intellectual like musicianship, intellectual like, you know, time meters, that you think of these guys like they have such an advanced understanding of how time works over each other, like different meters work on top of each other, that you would think you'll never hear them fuck up. One of the things I liked about Fish was I never heard them make mistakes ever, you know, and then I did. And the first time I heard them make a mistake was at Glens Falls 1994. I had been seeing them for, you know, almost 2 years, and I had never noticed a real like kind of missed note in any of their performances. And it was just like the Antelope in the third set of the Halloween show, and just coming around into like the run part, it kind of just train wrecked for a second, and then I was like, oh my God, I've never heard anything like that out of these guys. They're human. Right. So fucking cool.
Well, and that's what the
Tool, man. I mean, Tool, they are human, it turns out, but nobody knows that, right?
Well, now you do. It's like Ben and I have been talking about like Tool, like, because he has some students that want to learn it. I teach Tool lessons. If they want to learn a certain special song like Fruit Wolf Dance, I'm like, well, we're doing 46 and 2 first, because that's the song I ripped off to write that bass line.
Hold on one second. I'm going to get my dog.
But like Ben, it's like what we were saying too, you know, it's like with Tool, like it's all like D minor Phrygian, but it's like all the rhythms, like the polyrhythms, the parts, that's what makes their music so like complex and stacked.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's cool to come back to
that's like a whole other cool thing to explore with lessons.
Yeah, it's cool to come back to the whole you know, the live lesson masters it's about mastering music, which is you never master it, you're just working on mastering it. So for the teacher and the student, we're both on the same journey, just at different places, and the teacher's a little further along, so like, hey, don't take this left here, maybe go right or straight instead. You know, like with the metronome thing you're talking about, I wish I had drilled on a metronome early on. Like if I'm moving my head, which I actually learned from you, to really keep time, you have to be moving your body. And you know, if you move your head around, that's how you're keeping.
That's how I keep time. It turned out it probably detached my retina eventually. No, I don't.
So is that what happened with that?
No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I would say to you?
Yeah.
Like, I busted the metronome out like 2 years ago to test myself, because now Conspirator played on a click for many years, you know what I mean? So we were playing on a click, but that
you got Torch back there playing the drum and bass shit, like
right.
You need to.
And but the click also had eighth notes and 16th notes in it, so each of those beats are really close to each other, so it's easy to play on top of. It's basically like a fast metronome. I took it out and slowed it way down, and at first it was like, okay, I need to work on this a little bit. But very quickly, like and I'm telling my students this, within a couple of hours, I had locked in with my metronome. And then I started putting the metronome on the 2 and the 4 and feeling how that helps you create a kind of a swing feel. Like I knew that from jazz school. When I was in jazz school, wasn't in time enough to get ever to where I could just put a metronome on a 2 and 4 and play over it. But I would say do that now, because if you wish that you had done it then, you can get the full benefit of it in like a week. Like if you play on metronome every day for a week at all different tempos, it will be in place of having spent that time that you didn't do it then. Like the metronome it's tuning your brain to the time clock. And if you were to tune your brain to the time clock now, it's just as good as if you did it 10 years ago.
It's never too late to start building up good habits. And I'm starting to go back to my arpeggios that my bass teacher taught me. And I'm going to, even just naming some of the notes in time, like I can play it at a certain speed, but if I'm moving up a little bit, like, okay, just saying the notes without thinking, like pick a key, and then I'll notice that with my bass students, like I'll be like showing them and like trying to say the notes, and granted I'm thinking about it more and like kind of on the spot, so it might add some element, but I need to just know it again, like the times tables, like right in there, and playing it to a metronome will, you can't slow down, you have to just stick with it.
And I'm showing the students. I'm turning my metronome on and playing with the metronome at 60 beats per minute, and and even better yet, just counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you could just turn the metronome on at 60 beats per minute or 50 and just count eighth notes, and you're still tuning your brain to the metronome. And
Sure.
and if you do it for a week now, it doesn't matter that you didn't do it then. You're going to, from here on forth,
Exactly.
have that kind of improved time. You've made albums, so you've had to go into the studio and turn a metronome on.
Right.
It's not a foreign concept to you, I would imagine. Are you guys using a metronome in the studio?
Yeah, and that when we first started doing it, so that was with our old drummer Dan, and that was, some of our songs do kind of breathe a little bit. We actually realized in our song Pop Off, when we hit the main part, it drags a little bit, so we went from like 122 to 118, and it cut. When we tried playing to a metronome, it was like, oh, this isn't quite feeling right. But then when Alex Skater got into the studio with us, our engineer was like astounded. He'll do the adjustments of the kick and the snare to make sure it's on the metronome, and he'll look at it and be like, yep, he's exactly on.
Hmm.
No problem. And that's because he's been playing drums for so long and practicing to a metronome. His work ethic is so inspiring to me.
Yeah.
And
Well, if your drummer's not practicing to a metronome, you're fucked.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same with us. Like, for the special, we don't play to a metronome, and we don't record to one in the studio. We only will occasionally if it's a song we know we're going to have punch-ins, just to make that a bit easier.
Yeah.
But we don't have metronomes, but we play to a lot of like live loops. Like Johnny has 3 different delay pedals, and he sets different guitar loops. So it's something that Rory has to play along to a loop. It's a different way of playing to a metronome. And we want bands that we really look up to, like Battles. That's a band that like it was good, and now it's just guitar and Ableton and drums. But it used to be 3 of them. But the drummer John Stanier, he has a stack of amps behind him, so he can hear the loops.
Yeah.
And they make mistakes live. One of my favorite shows, talk about bands messing up. I saw Battles play Boston Calling like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of the day, and like John Stanier is the drummer from Helmet. He's going hard, sweating, and I could tell some loops were kind of chaotic. And afterwards, he gets off the stage, and I had friends working there, so I was hanging out backstage, and he's just like, "That set fucking sucked! Like, damn it, what a train wreck!" Slams his trailer door, and I'm like, damn. I'm like, yeah, like they live mistakes, like it happens, and especially when you're trying to play to loops.
Yeah, playing to loops is difficult. We always found that it was a little bit risky, and so we like got to the point where we were like, if we use loops, we're gonna throw a click on and just make sure all of the computers are slaved together to the same click. And, Alan just throws a click into our ears and we play along with metronome on stage. Many of the jams that don't even have loops in them, will just be on the click the whole time. Hey, buddy.
Hi.
How's it going? Well, and so we play to a click live. We play to and it's not like a loop. It's a fucking metronome. Like he really is just like click, 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 click. And John always has it in his ear if it's on. I've only started using it recently, and I find it's really helpful because what will happen is if I don't have the click in and they're on a click, I'll feel like I'll want it to like pick up a little bit or get some energy, and I'll be like, man, these guys are just like holding back. But then once the click is on, and then I can play to the click, I'll hear where they're getting their holding back from, and it stops making me feel like I want to go somewhere else, and I can sort of sink into the time that we're all being fed.
It's like listening to another instrument, another musician. It's just a very steady musician. Like you have to hear
there's
the context.
There's the click. Alan's right in time is what I'm hearing. Rather, when the click's not there, I'll be like, oh, Alan's playing this a little slow. The click comes on suddenly. I'm like, Alan's right the fucking time. This guy's killing it right now, And then I could concentrate on me getting comfortable at that tempo and being in the moment there. As they say in Fish, the trick is to surrender to the flow. And then I can just surrender to that and exist in that moment rather than attempting to be in some other thing that's in my head that we're not in. You know what I
So
mean?
will you play to them like if they both have a click on and you don't, but you're kind of just listening? Like, well, is that something you'll do? Or if the click's on, is it in everyone's ear?
So the way that it's been for the last 10 years is the clicks on and I'm not hearing it. Only in the last tour did I needed to turn the click on for tractor beam. Okay, because what will happen is there'll be segments where the drums drop out completely, but I have a bass line that still needs to be played for 8 bars, or I'm like playing like a pad or something. So I needed to turn that click on over that segment. And once I started doing that and playing with it over that segment, I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. Like, 124 really sounds like 124 with the click on, and I'm not trying to feel like I need to be at 128 or 130 or something, which is where we live a lot of the time. I'm sinking in at the tempo we're supposed to be at, and I'm just like living here. And Barber was like, "That's what I've been telling you for 10 years, man. Turn the click on in the jams." If Alan has it, I'll kind of check in with Brian Hayes, the click on. And if he says yes, I'll tell him, turn it on for me. I want to. And actually now I just went to where I have an iPad with me at all times on stage. And that iPad has the click track on it. And I could just, if I see that it's being used, I'll just unmute it.
Cool.
So now I'm
128 is fast, man. You guys are doing a lot of improv at that tempo. How do you keep up at that tempo and keep it consistent?
I mean, when we play some like trance music, it's at like 133, 135. Right. And our drum and bass is at 175 to 180. I mean, it's just the Biscuits are a fast band. We always like played fast jams,
but you can cut drum and bass in half, but it's harder with trance.
So 140, I start to get super uncomfortable. I think that I once heard Mike Gordon say that he doesn't play any 16th notes, and then I started listening, and I was like, holy shit. This guy literally doesn't play any 16th notes. Like, for real. Like, wow. Unless he's, like, slapping or something, like, he's really just playing 8th notes. And when I kind of started listening for that, I started realizing that if you're at 130 or 135 and you're playing your lines and not trying to play 16th notes, that's kind of like a halftime sensibility over it. Or sometimes I play, like, dub lines. Like, I'll be at 130 and I'll make it at 65.
Right. Okay.
So, I could still cut 130 in half. It's a slow half, but, not, just trying to be melodic and not use 16th notes helps with that. And I think that's kind of what ends up happening. But, 128, 130, 135, like we peak a lot of our jams even faster than that. They start to speed up towards the end of the jam to 140, 145. And that's, we sort of flatten everything out, go from staccato to legato, and John just kind of takes us to the top.
Right.
Yeah, and having the click kind of keeps you, it's more intentional. So instead of just kind of let's see what happens, it's like, well, this is what we're doing. And as I also heard, Mike Gordon had a Instagram live video, just a Q&A session, and he was talking about when they kind of switched from going everywhere in jams, like taking it wherever they wanted to go. It's like, let's just try to stay in one mode and one key and use that constraint to really see where we can take things. And so that, I forget when he said they started doing that more, but I've noticed that too. He'll do a lot of root fifth octaves and just kind of staying around, messing with like rhythm a little bit, but just the tiny, going with the flow, but having the flow be very concise and like honed in creates a different experience than just kind of whatever.
Right. There was a lot of whatever. There was a lot of just like, soloing between the bass and the guitar back in the day. You know what I mean? That was like, he was like a baritone guitar player more than a bass player.
Yeah, I identify with the lead bassist type of feel. I mean, Phil Lesh too is very melodic and walking around. I think he locked into I kind of look at it like a double helix. Like you're the foundation, but you kind of like move around it. And then the center is where that pocket is, and you're sort of just surrounding it and keeping it in place, rather than just like dum dum dum. It's like kind of working around.
He solos there. He's a bass baritone guitarist too. He plays. We've always said that Phil is more baritone guitar than he is bass. They solo. Phil and Mike solo.
Yeah,
I love to do that. It's so fun. But in my bands, I find myself ending up getting into some sort of repetitive pocket and sticking with it and just slowly shifting. What
That's
Mike
what
is talking about, what they're now doing
you've been
is
doing.
what we've always done.
Right.
That's what we do. We'll change keys, with purposefully if we're moving to a new song. And that the other thing about the Biscuits is every song goes to another song. We're
Yeah.
always kind of just flowing the sets together. So we have no choice but to change key in the jam at some point because there's a destination, but we like to just kind of live in the jam. Like if the jam is in D Dorian, we like to live in D Dorian for a while and take and live within that constraint and see where that takes us.
Let it breathe.
Yeah, that's really fun for us.
Hey, Brownie, do you think a question I had too, just about like as a bass player, one of the reasons like that I really look up to you is how many projects you're in and how you've become this mainstay in all and very different stuff. I mean, what Star Kitchen is playing, it has that funky rootsy kind of vibe to it that's different than the Jamtronica thing. Do you apply like a different kind of modality, or like do you have like your kind of crate, your bag of tricks? Okay, if we're in D Dorian, I know what I'm doing there. Or is there a different philosophy with the Biscuits or with Star Kitchen or Conspirator where you're going, this band has this vibe, so I'm gonna maybe have these licks, or I'm gonna take a mode and put it in a different context? Is it catered to the project, or is it more just a foundation of you as a
Okay,
bass player?
it's a great question. First of all, I want to point out that the number of projects that any musician is in at any given time, and this is scientific, is directly correlated to the number of children that they've birthed. So I've noticed that I was always like, I had kids first in our scene, you know what I mean? And we were going to holidays with Humphreys and Sound Tribe, and Zach, my oldest son, was the only kid at the whole entire event. We had
Cool.
all these other bands, and there was only one musician that had a kid. It was me. And then I started starting side projects, and then I had another kid, added a couple side projects. Third kid, added a couple side projects. Then Humphreys started having kids, right? And now they've added 2 or 3 kids, and you've got Humphreys, and then you've got the Omega Moose, and you've got Doom Flamingo, and the Brain Damage Eggman keeps coming back, and Brendan and Joel are doing a solo show over here.
Right.
So I think that first and foremost, number of projects, if you were to look across the scene, there's a direct correlation with number of kids. The answer for me is Electron, which is, was born out of necessity when I was fired from the Biscuits in the year 2000, like New Year's 2000, is like the Biscuits. It's the one where I've tried to make it sound like the songs that I write and the band that I come from. It's meant to be a Jamtronica band. But without all of John's songs, just my songs and cover songs and some of Tommy's songs and stuff. All of the other bands, if I can't make them unique, then I don't think that there's really a purpose for them to exist. So, like Conspirator, what really appealed to me was when Aaron came to me. Aaron started Conspirator with DJ Omen, and what appealed to me was it was on computers. We were going to get to explore this other thing. We were going to make all of these new kinds of beats and modalities and work in a different context. And that was great until, kind of got away from us a little bit stylistically, at least for me. But it lived in its own lane, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
More
like
heavily on the electronic side of it, going
right.
more down.
So playing with John Kadalchik, like in the West Philly Fadeaway, I did that for a purpose. There wasn't just to go on the road and play Dead songs because I like Dead songs and I wanted to make money. I wanted to really take a deeper dive into Dead's music after playing with Bobby and Billy and Mickey. I felt like I had missed an opportunity to really understand what was going on with this music, and I wanted to take another shot at like studying it and learning it and figuring out what was really going on. And in most of the cases, what was going on was they play a lot of major pentatonic, which is something the Biscuits don't really ever do. And so I just was unfamiliar with that scale. It sounds so stupid because it's like the easiest of all of the scales.
It's not a typical one for a lot. For me, I'm less comfortable in a major key than a minor key. So I think for a lot of bass players, they come from that. point of view.
So I spent this time with John Kadalchik and with Aaron and with Mike working on these songs that were major pentatonic. And John Kay sat me down and showed me some tricks of how to play major pentatonic, to how to use the passing tone between the 2 and the 3 and the 5 and the 6 to rhythmically end up where you want to be in songs that have like triplet feels, swing feels. And I did like a little tour. We did a handful of shows last summer, and I came out of it like vastly more knowledgeable about how to play bass, you know? And that was the point of West Philly Fadeaway. And that's the point of Star Kitchen. Like, I took on these projects as a way to increase my own personal understanding of a time period of music that I hadn't connected the dots with from here to here, like I am for some of my students. I hadn't really thought deeply about funk and soul music and how to play it on bass. Same with Grateful Dead. I had done that with jazz. I had done that with like later style jam bands, but I skipped like late 60s, early 70s. I kind of skipped it. I went straight from, I learned everything up until like 63 in jazz school and then went right into the Disco Biscuits. And I never took a deep dive into these music. So I wanted to study it. And so I started a band that would be based around it. And I've learned how to play funk music in that time. Now in Star Kitchen, I've then taken what I know about jamming and applied it into there so that we go into these modal jams. And I do change the bass line more than the guy from James Brown's band does. Whoever.
No variations.
Right. Like I'm doing more variations. They're just playing it and playing it and playing it. And that's what separates Star Kitchen from the other, you know, retro funk bands that exist still that go out there, which are great. And I'm like big fan of, like, you know, but we're taking these jams and doing segues and putting new beats over them and playing hip hop beats over it. But I started it as like a learning project.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. One of my favorite bass players is Michael Henderson. Miles Davis hired him for his On the Corner album. After Big Crew, when Miles started, you know, they did that. It was cool you brought up that tour with the Dead when they were combining all that modal improv. So after Bitches Brew, he started to get more into this contemporary funk, listening to Sly and the Family Stone and stuff. And so he hired Michael Henderson, who I believe was playing bass with Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
He was an English dude, played just jazz bass, funk bass player, and he got a call from Miles, I want you to join my band. He's like, well, I'm not really a jazz bass player. And he's like, you're not going to play jazz. You're going to come over here.
Amandla, is he on the Amandla album? Like that? I know like Amandla's like R&B, Miles.
I think that was a little later. On the Corner was his first album that he was on. Which was like 71 or 2. Yeah, it's an awesome. And so he goes, play a bass line, and it's going to be a 1-bar phrase, and there's no variations. So if you listen to On the Corner, every song, I mean, these are like 15-minute songs, and the bass line just doesn't change. It's just the same. But like Miles is doing his like wah-wah trumpet and all the crazy different, the sleigh bells are all over that album. But so it's cool. I mean, he took a bass player from a different scene, and he wanted to apply it to his music, to where he was going. So I think it's an interesting thing to do, and especially with the bass player, right? You're changing the foundation. You're changing the core to dictate your direction, kind of.
Yeah, and I like specifically went to find musicians that came from that world rather than asking musicians that came from my world to try to play like that, you know. And actually I didn't know how the fuck I was going to do it with Star Kitchen, but what ended up happening was the universe kind of just delivers, you know. Like Danny Mayer was just there one day, like he was suddenly lived in my neighborhood, and his son was in my house hanging out with my son, and then Danny Mayer's in my life, and I was like, oh my God, I want to start a funk band, and here's this guy who's like in funk bands and knows funk better than anybody. And then he told me like, hey, Rob Marshall just moved to the neighborhood, like, should we hire him? And it was just like, it was one thing after another that brought me these guys that really knew this music inside and out, experts in the kind of music that I was hoping to play. And I sat with them for 2 years, and every song they would introduce, I didn't know. And they're all standards. I know them all now. I learned it all. Like, you know, it's all.
Yeah, we were talking about that a bit at a festival last summer. And you're like, this is my first time playing like the Grant Green stuff, but it sounded really cool. Star Kitchen has a really cool vibe.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
The guys are so great. The band is so great. It's just like it's such a different world from that I come from, and but I'm trying to make it so like Biscuit fans can come see it and will really enjoy it. But it's a different tempo and it's a different feel, and just chiller music. It's just chill.
Well, you're probably introducing Biscuit's fan base to maybe some of these classic funk tunes that they didn't know before.
Right.
And it also just goes back to the tracing your heroes to really get to the core of it all, to get back to basics.
Yeah.
Basics.
Well, Luke, do you have a bass lesson come up at 4 that you need to be looking at?
I do, but he knows that we're doing a Back to Basics interview with Brownie, and so he's lenient. He's like, let me know. He's like, let me know if I can get in there a little bit. So
Marc, thanks for doing this.
A little bit, but yeah, I'm down to wrap up soon. Yeah.
I think that I have stuff coming up too.
Well, this won't be the last time we talk to you. This was a great start, and we're really honored to have you as our first guest. This is an idea we've had.
First guest.
You did it.
First guest, man. Yes.
We've had this idea for a while, sort of as a joke at first, and then eventually like, well, why don't we do it? And I made the joke. We both laid the foundation, but no one took the lead, which is classic bass player thing.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I've had this same joke, by the way, with Berkowitz, Dan Berkowitz from CID.
Yeah.
You know Dan? He like they throw the Fish Mexico shows and do all the VIP. Our joke is that we have a podcast as well, and it's called Thank God We're Perfect with Marc and Dan. We are back.
Yeah.
Thank God we're perfect with Marc and Dan, and we always joke about that. But we haven't made the podcast yet.
Then there's room for improvement. You're not perfect yet.
Yeah, no, we haven't done anything except joke about it.
Yeah. Well, that's what we did for about actually CC pointed out that I think we first talked about it at Woodhenge.
Guys.
Oh, wow. A long time ago.
Hey. So let's bring him in.
Guest with
Jeremy.
Guest.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, Jeremy.
I'm on back.
Ben and Luke, too.
Ben and Luke.
What's up, Jeremy?
Ha!
You're our second guest.
Second guest on Back to Basics, Jeremy Sean.
All right.
We're just wrapping up. Jeremy, I'll call you right back, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Ask him if he's in pajama pants right now.
Of course he is.
Of course he is.
I'm in pajama pants right now.
You guys are wearing pants? Jeez, I should have dressed up for this.
Oh, yeah, man.
Well, hey,
Well,
Marc.
thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Luke, I know that we're gonna get you all the forms you need to get up on this.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I can't wait to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Talk to you
I'll
soon.
post we'll post this next Monday, Marc, and we'll tag Live Lesson Masters and all that good stuff.
Awesome.
All right.
We'll speak before then for sure.
All right, stay on the
All right,
line.
thanks, Brownie. Appreciate you, man.
Peace.
See you. All right. Shit, Luke, that was cool.
Hey, what an interesting conversation.
Yeah, we're like, we'll get like 15, 30 minutes in. He's a busy guy, and an hour and a half later?
Yeah, and just some really cool stories. That was super interesting for me, for you. So I think everyone that listens to this podcast is gonna find some value in that.
Yeah, and even when he was going, earlier part like with modes, like going into Dorian, kind of explaining things. It's like, okay, I kind of get that, and I know that. For people who might not, for me 5-10 years ago, I'd be like taking notes, like okay, and then even later on, I was just sort of spacing off a little bit, and he was talking. I'm like, oh wait, focus on what he's saying. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this and like go over some of that stuff.
Yeah, there's some real knowledge there. He really knows modal harmony and theory, and that was a total new. I didn't know he went to New School for Jazz. I mean, that is a really prestigious school. Like I didn't get in it, and I'm glad. I at 18 years old, I would have been in no position to go to that school. I didn't get into Berkeley at first. I went to another school for 2 years, and I'm really glad that then I went back. I was in a better position to absorb it and to learn. But even just to go there for a year, I mean, it's a really intense jazz program there.
He has
really cool.
He has an interesting, approach to life. I want to say it's very, very bass feeling. Like he feels like a bass player in that.
Totally.
He knows generally where he's going with things, and even with the Star Kitchen thing, he pointed out like I had this idea, but I didn't know how it would manifest, and all of a sudden these guys are just living in my neighborhood, and that's kind of like the cool, I guess the more spiritual, like hippy dippy aspect that I find interesting, and I like to explore with the whole intentionality thing. It's like he's come so far in his life. One thing we talked about at Electric Factory the first time he opened for Conspirator, just like where he's come from and how he grew up, and in college his friends kind of took him under their wing and he started playing bass, and he's just he's just constantly shooting upwards and just like working on challenging himself and putting himself out there, even at this very accomplished level in his career. He's still like, nope, time to take even more chances. And that that's more
Yeah.
inspiring than anything to me as a human.
Totally, man. I mean, he just like I don't know if it's a bass player thing, but it's like Brownie has it. You know, like Les Claypool, who's a hero of mine, is just very prolific. Where he has directed movies, written novels, so many different bands, in addition to an already very successful
Well,
project.
you got your John Paul Jones too, who played piano and like wrote other stuff. And I consider bass players generally composers that happen to play bass on a lot of levels,
Totally.
even if they're not doing it
I
musically
agree
with
with
that project. Like they have that feel and that vibe, and that's understanding the bass is sort of seeing how everything's put together around it, rhythmically, melodically, and that's something I used to kind of resist being like a bass player. Like I'm a bassist. Like, well, no, I'm a musician who plays bass in this project.
you.
Like
Right.
this is what I'm doing, but the more I understand
It's
about
the
bass.
crayon you picked out of the box, is how Les Claypool describes it.
Yeah, yeah, and I played keys first, and I remember wanting to be like Jimi Hendrix is one of my big three inspirations in life. It's Hendrix, Socrates, and Albert Einstein are the three I try to model my life around as much as possible.
Fire,
I've had that for a
fire.
while, and yeah, it's
It's a
like
good
well, I can't
trio.
be Jimi Hendrix on I can't play guitar. I picked it up. I'm like I feel too smart to feel this stupid kind of thing. So I was like,
Yeah,
fuck this, I'm good. Played piano, but it never clicked to me that you can be a rock star on piano, and obviously you very much can. But I'm glad I didn't because when I picked up my first bass at my friend's birthday party, I was like, oh, this is my it's like a lightning rod, and I connected with
yeah,
my future. It's like boom, this is it.
right.
I feel this, and
It speaks
it's
to you, and it's the same. And maybe it's because bass is a resonant instrument. It
yeah.
was the same to me. Music, performance. I've movies, writing. I've always had a creative mind, and bass was the thing that I felt like maybe just I could apply better to. Like when I was a guitar player, and then when I first started playing a bass, I loved it. The way that it physically felt to me
Hmm.
resonated on a
It
very
just
deep
makes
level.
sense. It speaks to me, and it also speaks through me.
Yeah, man.
I consider not to get too deep into the meditative aspects or the spiritual aspects of my esoteric music understanding, but I look at music in a lot of ways as like a way to it's an agnostic worship. I don't know if we touched on this briefly last time,
No,
but
no, no.
the having that connection. It's sort of like a not a prayer book or anything, or like
Right.
a chant or a meditation or a prayer, but like it's a conduit through which to experience sort of a higher form of my consciousness and my reality. Obviously, taking
Absolutely.
it out there a little bit, but
No, I
that
love it. I think that bass, and it's your instrument, it's your voice, and however you apply, however you get to a higher level of spirituality or just existence. For a lot
right.
of people, it's religion, and I have no issue. I love that side of religion. I am not as into like the focusing on people's differences and war and murder and all that comes with religion, organized religion, but the feeling of some giving your life meaning, and however that happens for you. For some people it's religion, for some it's spirituality, for some it's music, for some it's bass, and for some it's a combination of everything. So
For some, it's atheism. Like that's how they connect with the higher self. Is like there is no higher aspect. It's like, well, okay, good.
right,
Create your own meaning then. Like that's beautiful too. But to have
right.
the perspective of bass to sort of pivot around and music in general, it's foundational. To get back to basics, as it were.
I mean, that's what we're doing, is getting back to basics.
Yeah.
But
Well,
hey, man, this is a great second episode. We got a podcast to launch right now. Our new one is live. We're gonna get to that. I got bass to teach,
teach
and
me. I'm gonna
this was great.
start working on my schwa streaming. There's so much going into it,
Great.
but
I
I got
can't
it.
I can't wait to watch this Wednesday. You're doing the next one, right?
Yeah, this is a soft one. We have the big one next Monday, so we're trying to figure out how to collaborate without being near each other, obviously. So, social
Yeah.
streaming, social distance streaming. So we'll put something out Wednesday, probably on Discord, I think. But this
Yeah.
will be debuting next Monday, so
Great.
tune in. We're gonna keep the Wednesday thing going, 8 p.m. So there'll be
Cool.
something up, either a new song, an old show, a new stream. So tune in every Wednesday, and I look forward to your next stream where
Yeah.
I will officially know how to pronounce your last name because you're saying it's like Beeman. I was like, oh shit, I've been thinking Bemand in my head every time,
Oh man, that's what a lot of people have said, and
every single
I
time
think
I hear it.
I mean that's when I first met Brownie. He was Luke Bemand, like there's plenty. It's French, then English, then American. I think it's become Beeman just because it's the most like bastardized American way to say it.
I love
Maybe,
it. Yeah, yeah. It's
but
like Beeman
no,
and
yeah,
Jax, the
yeah.
cartoon from when I was a kid.
Demand with a B is how a lot of people like will say, but then it's Bemand. I don't care. Make it say
You don't
it's
know
the same as
you're not You're not super demanding, so
I'm not super a demanding person. Like
yeah.
I like when people pronounce the sort of the le special. I'd be like, is that not it? And I'm like, well, we pronounce it as like bastard, as American as you can. Le special. You want to throw a red flag? I'm not gonna stop you. You know.
Right.
But hey, man, I just had a little flash. I hope we don't cut out here. And
Yeah, I was
yeah, man,
worried the whole
let's
time.
get
It's like
back to
I just want to
basics.
stop recording to save the recording because that was such a good episode. That's like all the best sets
I
never
know.
get recorded. I was like, oh, please, please, please. So let's just head out now and
I know. Watch thunder hits a tree right now, and we lose it all. Right, like my lights just flickered, and I was like, oh boy.
All right. Well, I'll see you, and we'll catch you next week. We'll talk about which guests we want to do via email or whatever.
Great.
All right. See all you.
Yeah, and anybody listening, hit us up. Yeah.
All you basic
Hit us up
bitches out there.
what you want to hear. Peace, y'all. Later, buddy.